Hi, and welcome to the Progress Monitoring and Data Collection module. I'm Caitlin Law, the Bitmoji on the right, one of your SPED instructional coaches. This module is broken down into 3 parts. First, you'll have the data collection before an ARD, progress monitoring after an ARD, and finally, data types and tools. In our process of writing an individualized education program known as an IEP, one piece is dependent on the others. It is a continuous process throughout the school year. For this module, we're going to focus on the progress monitoring and data collection parts of the wheel. Data-driven educational decision-making refers to the process by which educators examine data to identify students' strengths and deficiencies and apply those findings to their practice. This statement explains the why behind the data collection process. It also points out that instruction should be a fluid concept based on the data that is continuously collected. Here we have a graphic organizer that has been adapted to the Round Rock ISD way of thinking. We will explore each step of this visual through the course of this module. For this first section, we're going to focus on the data collection part of the wheel. Data collection also occurs during progress monitoring, but we are first going to look at the data collection process that occurs before an ARD. You want to start by defining the target. This means you want to identify the students' strengths and weaknesses. To do this, you should put your detective hat on and begin diving through past paperwork, such as past ARDs, past progress reports, past evaluations, etc. You will note the students' eligibility and make sure to keep that in mind throughout the process. For example, if a student has a math calculations learning disability, you would know that you focus your data collection on math. The visual to the right points out that you will want to separate academic and behavior skills when collecting data. Next, you will want to talk to the general education and the inclusion teachers and allow them the opportunity to provide their feedback. When talking to the teachers about the student, you need to ask specific questions that will result in specific data. For example, how often can Bobby answer main idea questions? If you're talking about behavior, you will want to gather specifics such as duration and frequency of the specific behavior. The next step is to select the data sources that will assist you in collecting the baseline data for the specific skills you have identified during the detective process. Round Rock ISD's guidance from the PLAF module states that best practice is to have 2 or more sources of data. On the PLAF data collection tool, there is a column with recommendations on data sources. As the district changes with the times, access to specific sources will also change. The PLAF data collection tool will assist keeping up with what sources the district uses each year. All data should be tied to specific skills. You may be asking yourself, how do I get data for specific skills from broad data sources? That is a great question. We encourage sources to include, but are not limited to, work samples, teacher feedback, district common assessments, virtual programs, running records, and benchmark type sources. Let's look at one example of a source that often gives broad data and how you can use it. The majority of students in Round Rock ISD complete District Common Assessments, otherwise known as DCAs. Each question on the assessment is tied to state standards and categories. In this example, you can see that the student got 5 out of 13 correct on the 7th grade Unit 4 Reading Summative, translating to a 38%. However, you would not use that data as a baseline source. It is not specific enough to the student's specific skill strengths and weaknesses. In this next image, there's a pink box around the TEKS categories assessed. This data is useful only in the sense that it helps you narrow down the data. The student answers 2 out of 2 questions correct about informational text, but appears to have a weakness when reading across genres. The blue underlined sections in the image demonstrate the specific skill the TEK is addressing on this assessment. For example, the student is able to make inferences 1 out of 3 times and is not able to use text evidence to support responses, indicated by 0 out of 1 time. After you have identified the targeted skills and gathered the necessary baseline data to support them, you can write your PLAF and goals and objectives. In the visual, it says to analyze the baseline data. By doing this, you will identify the targeted skills for the student's IEP. It also says to determine the intervention goal, and timeline. This is referring to the IEP goal and objectives, how the goal will be monitored and worked on, and the timelines that lead up to 36 instructional weeks. This concludes Part 1, Before an ARD, the data collection process.